YouTube, coming back today with really one of my last videos of the week. I will be in Colorado this coming week, so I will not be doing that many videos this coming week. Probably will be doing my bracketology or just my overall bracket picks, and that's about it. But today I wanted to come back with my next edition of my NBA mock draft. I did one like a month ago, and obviously some things have changed, and mainly I wanted to do one to conclude or really round out my NBA draft big board ranking series. So I finished that a couple days ago, and I mean, obviously I did quite a bit of research for that stuff and got just a little bit of better idea of just the scouting and the actual stocks right now of all the players that were in my big board rankings. So I am using the draft order from NBADraft.net like I always do. I'm going to post the link to that website in the description below. They always have an updated mock draft, and they always have the updated draft order, so within normally like 1 or 2 days. So it's a convenient site, and yeah, anyway, let's move into the draft. So first overall pick, it's same as always. I have the Philadelphia 76ers taking the 6'10 power forward out of LSU, Ben Simmons. Now, Ben Simmons had a rough, probably, I wouldn't say end of the season because they're probably still going to be an NIT team, but had a rough finish to the regular season and SEC tournament today with the 71-38 loss to Texas A&M. Shot about 20%, or LSU as a team shot about 20% from the field. Really a horrific day. I think that's more on the coaching of LSU than anything, though. Anyway, I really feel like Ben Simmons is a good fit for the Sixers if they're able to really shuffle around some of the front court, maybe trade Joel Embiid, or find a good deal for Jaleel or Nerlens Noel, and really just start building up that backcourt. Obviously, for the 76ers, the biggest thing is just stop tanking. I mean, for personal sake, I really hope that Ben Simmons doesn't go to the Sixers or Brandon Ingram, but if the Sixers do end up with the first pick, it's probably going to be Ben Simmons. So at number 2, I got the LA Lakers taking the 6'9 small forward out of Duke, Brandon Ingram. So I think this could be a really, really good, three-headed young trio between Jordan Clarkson, D'Angelo Russell, and Brandon Ingram if this actually does come true. And then, I mean, you got Julius Randle at the 4. Probably would need to find a new center besides Roy Hibbert, but you'd have a nice little core there to build off of for the Lakers in a good direction to start going in. Brandon Ingram's had some shooting troubles recently. He's been compared, or pretty commonly compared to a poor man's Kevin Durant. And lengthwise, I get that. Driving-wise, I get that. But I think his defenses honestly will develop to be better than Durant's. And obviously, the offense I don't think will be really near Durant. I think they're different players. Obviously, like I said, maybe athleticism-wise, length-wise, they're about the same, but I think that's really where the comparison stops. So, at number 3, I got the Phoenix Suns taking the 7-foot power forward out of Croatia, Dragan. So, the Suns got a whole host of needs in the front court, and really at shooting guard. Obviously, Eric Bledsoe and small forward. I wouldn't really say shooting guard as much as small forward, but this is a team that is very, very, very heavily concentrated on Eric Bledsoe, and also a team that has a decent amount of first-round picks. I believe they have 3 as of right now, and I think that a draft that has this deep a shooting guard class with a team that needs a shooting guard pretty desperately could also use a power forward. That the Suns could actually start building, heading in the right direction. I think Dragan Bender obviously might take a year or 2 for him to get over here, but if you watch Dragan Bender, just watch a couple of mixtapes or a full game, then you notice he really is a special talent. Kind of like a Kristaps Porzingis 2.0 is kind of like the way I describe him. Kristaps Porzingis would be by far the best comparison for him. He's got good ball handling abilities. He's athletic. He can shoot from anywhere, and I think that'll translate to the defense once he starts filling out that frame a little bit more. He's only at, well, I can't really say only at 220 pounds, but I feel like he can develop a little bit more on defense, and he just has a really high upside. So at number 4, I got the Boston Celtics taking the 6'10" power forward out of Cal. That is Ivan Rabb. So the Celtics, if they end up with the number 4 pick, then obviously that probably if the situation, or if the draft order goes Simmons 1, Ingram 2, Bender 3, then it leaves the Celtics with a lot of options to go with. This is a team obviously very heavy in the backcourt that still needs a lot of work in the front court, and there's a couple ways they could go. Like I said, if Bender's gone, then that leaves guys like Poeltl, Labissiere, even if he finishes out the season well, and Rabb to being drafted very, very early. And I think Rabb would be the best option. He's finished off the season well. His game has developed very well at the end of the season. He's got some very clean, crisp post moves. Kid's going to be very good in the NBA, I think. He's going to be a load to handle. Like I said, his mid-range game's developing well. He's got good post moves, got a good just basketball IQ. Free throws have to improve, but I think that'll come with time. So at number 5, I got the Minnesota Timberwolves taking the 6'4" point guard out of Providence, and that is Kris Dunn. So I love everything about Kris Dunn's game. He's a good facilitator. He's athletic. He's fast. He's a decent defender, and he matches up well with a lot of the other point guards in the NBA. Now, I actually was at the Timberwolves game last night, and I believe the Timberwolves have a lot to work with. That's a good team heading into the future, I think. Gorgui Dieng is a very underrated piece. Karl Anthony Towns is obviously one of the best young players in the game. Andrew Wiggins, if he continues developing well, should be good as well. Obviously, the 2014 first overall pick. And I think the biggest lacking piece on that team is point guard. Now, I get it, Rubio hit the game-winning three-pointer last night, but I don't see what people like in Rubio's game. He's supposed to be a good facilitator. Shooting was supposed to come through eventually. He's still a good facilitator, but I just think he's not that athletic. His shooting's definitely not there. He's a little bit of a mismatch he's not a mismatch. It's a mismatch against him when there's some of the better point guards in the NBA. Like Russell Westbrook had kind of a field day yesterday going against Ricky Rubio, and I think that Kris Dunn would be that final piece the Timberwolves need to start making a move into the future, start being a playoff contender again, and I think that'd be a great pick. So at number 6, I got the New Orleans Pelicans taking the 6'4" shooting guard out of Kentucky, and that's Jamal Murray. So the Pelicans are a team that's obviously building around one of the best young players in the NBA right now, and that is Anthony Davis. They had Ryan Anderson come through in a big way this year. It's hard to tell if he's going to be consistent heading into the future, but the Pelicans need some supporting pieces for Anthony Davis. They got rid of Omer Asik, and that was probably a thing that had to happen, but I think this is a team that really, really, really needs a new shooting guard. Eric Gordon's fine. He might be okay coming off the bench, but I think they're set at point guard, maybe small forward. I don't know if Tyreke Evans is a long-term solution there, but like I said, I think Jamal Murray would be a good supporting piece for Anthony Davis, obviously another Kentucky kid, and that would form a pretty good trio between Drew Holiday, Anthony Davis, and Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray's been very, very good in the stretch run of the year. He's been a 20-point machine almost every single night, and a little bit of a rough start to the year, but finding that consistency, showing why he was a 5-star prospect coming into college. So at number 7, I have the Sacramento Kings taking the 6'4" shooting guard out of Oklahoma, and that is Buddy Hield. So Buddy Hield had one of the more, I wouldn't say heartbreaking because I'm not a big Sooners fan, but I guess for a Sooners fan, one of the more heartbreaking defeats last night. Kept the ball in his hands maybe about a half second too long, and what looked like him hitting the game-winning three-pointer to beat West Virginia actually ended up not being a buzzer beater. So anyway, I think that Buddy Hield is still the leading contender for Player of the Year. He's electric to watch in person. He's one of the best offensive players, and he might be the best pure scorer in college basketball right now. I think that translates extremely well to the NBA. He's been almost unguardable this year. His scoring instincts, the defense off ball is probably the biggest problem for him. Some defensive matchups against some of the better shooting guards in the NBA, I just don't see him defending well against a guy like James Harden that just moves extremely well on offense and knows how to draw fouls. But like I said, Buddy Hield is one of the best pure scorers in college basketball. I think him being able to have 4 years to polish off his game will translate well to the NBA. This is a Kings team right now that is led at shooting guard by Ben McLemore, who is decent. I mean, I just don't think he's a starting caliber two in the NBA. I think he's a guy that should be coming off the bench, and if the Kings want to move forward anytime soon, don't know what direction they're going to be going in. Rudy Gay is a decent piece. Rajon Rondo's been up and down this year. Obviously, DeMarcus Cousins, one of the two best centers in basketball, might be the best center overall. In my opinion, he is. And I think that putting in Buddy Hield to that lineup, it would just give it a good spark that it needed to finally open up that offense. Now, one of the problems for the Kings is defense, and that might be the qualm that a lot of people have with this pick. But I think if you have Buddy Hield at 7, you pretty much have to look in that direction. Alright, so move on to my number 8 pick, and I have the Denver Nuggets taking the 6'7" small forward and shooting guard out of Cal, and that is Jaylen Brown. So, I don't know if Jaylen Brown's is gonna fall this far. Now, the Nuggets need a lot of help at the shooting guard position. Will Barton is currently the best shooting guard they have, and Gallinari's okay at small forward, but I think that's not a future direction for them to move in. They've got good pieces on that team with Farid and Emmanuel Mudiay, if Mudiay can continue to improve the jumper. But I think having Jaylen Brown alongside those two guys, just to add another athletic freak into that lineup that can start developing that team into the future, maybe adding an actual face to the franchise, and just, like I said, adding another talented piece to a lineup that really needs one would do the Denver Nuggets a world of good. Another team a lot like the Phoenix Suns that has 3 first-round picks, so a lot of room to improve the team this year in the draft. So at number 9, I have the Toronto Raptors taking the 7'1" center out of Utah, and that's Jakob Poeltl. So the Raptors are a team that has, I think, just been hoping that Jonas Valanciunas is going to somehow come through and be that long-term center, and I just don't know if he is. He hasn't really hit that. He hasn't hit that ceiling yet that he's supposed to, and I'm not quite sure of his averages this year. I'm trying to pull that up right now, but Valanciunas is a guy that I still believe he's a talented center, but I don't know if he's the long-term answer for a Toronto Raptors team that's looking like one of the best teams in the East this year. Valanciunas is averaging 9 rebounds and 12.7 points per game this year. So he's having a good year. He's still a young guy. He's only 23 years old. And like I said, I don't know if he's the answer for them long term. I think that even if he is, that they could use another option at center, maybe coming off the bench. I mean, that's a high price to pay with a top 10 pick to just say, oh, he's coming off the bench. But like I said, I don't know if Valanciunas is the long-term option, and if they do end up keeping DeMar DeRozan, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to, just because he's probably going to be demanding max money this year. Then they're set at 1, 2, and 3, and then, or at the 1, the 2, and the 3, they could definitely use a power forward, but just not that many available at that point in the draft. So at number 10, I have the Milwaukee Bucks taking the 6'5" point guard out of Washington. That's Dejounte Murray. So I like Dejounte Murray. I still don't know if he's going to declare this year. It's looking more and more every day like he's going to end up declaring. And I think he is one of the best point guards in this draft. I think he would end up being the second best point guard in this draft if he does decide to declare. And the Bucks, they've got a decent starting point guard right now in Michael Carter-Williams, but again, not a long-term answer in my mind. They're set, I think, long-term at every other position. This is a team that probably has either Greg Monroe or Jabari Parker playing the 4 and the 5, or the 3 and the 4, whatever way you want to look at it. Antetokounmpo fits in well there also. Also with Chris Middleton and O.J. Mayo. This team's set at every position, I think, except for at the 1. And Michael Carter-Williams has just kind of been downhill for him ever since his rookie year. He's been banged up at times, and I think that they need a new direction to head in long term if this Bucks team wants to realize the ceiling that they can hit. This is a Bucks team that's extremely talented. Was supposed to have a big year in the East this year after coming out as like a 4 or 5 seed last year in the playoffs. So move on to number 11. I have the Orlando Magic taking the 6'10" power forward out of Michigan State, and that's Deyonta Davis. So this fills a big need for the Magic at power forward. Magic team that looks a little bit lost right now. They're pretty set at a lot of positions long term if they're going to stay in the direction of Victor Oladipo, who I think could still be a future superstar in the league, if not just a solid piece. Right now, I believe their starting power forward is Vucevic at times, and I don't know who it is at other times. Andrew Nicholson, Ersan Ilyasova, however you say that. And decent power forward, but more of a bench player in my mind than anything else. He's been a starter at times. He's got a decent mid-range jumper, but that's about it. Deyonta Davis is a guy that I think has a huge ceiling. He's been developing post move. He's one of the most gritty power forwards down low. He's got good length, good athleticism, and he's a very, very good defender and rebounder. And I think that a Magic team that's a little bit lost right now could use a good intangible, or a guy that has a lot of intangibles like Deyonta Davis that are hard to find, that could really give the Magic more of an identity and give some assistance alongside a good center, Nikola Vucevic, in the paint. Add some skill to the bigs. So at number 12, I have the Utah Jazz taking the 6'9" power forward out of UNC, and that is Brice Johnson. So I like Brice Johnson. He's one of my favorite players in college basketball. I think he's one of the best players in college basketball. And I think it's a really good fit with the Jazz. It's hard to tell what the biggest need is for the Jazz right now. Most mock drafts that I've looked at have the Jazz taking a guy like Deyonta Davis, Domantas Sabonis, or Brice Johnson. One of the better power forwards in the draft that have like more of a specific identity. And the Jazz do right now have a good big setup with Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert. But they really don't have anyone behind those two that can work in the rotation. This is a team that's really working more alongside Trevor Booker and Rodney Hood after those two, and at the 4 position, and that's not a good long-term solution to a team that's looking to compete in the tough West. So at number 13, I have the Phoenix Suns with their second pick in the first round, taking the 6'6" shooting guard / small forward out of Michigan State, and that's Denzel Valentine. So I mentioned earlier some of the bigger needs for the Suns, and one of them is shooting guard and small forward. Right now, I believe their starting small forward is TJ Warren, and their starting shooting guard is Devin Booker. And again, not something that's a winning option long term. This is a team that's probably set at point guard for a while with Brandon Knight and Eric Bledsoe. And Eric Bledsoe can play the two, but more so point guard in my mind than point guard than a shooting guard. And I think that Denzel Valentine's a good fit here. Again, another team that could use more of an identity. Don't know why they got rid of the Morris twins. Those guys were, I wouldn't say the heart and soul of the team, but a big chunk of the starting 5 of the Suns roster. And the Suns front office has not been doing so hot the last couple months. And again, this is a team that will have a make-or-break draft this offseason. I think, again, another identity guy like Denzel Valentine, who's competed for Player of the Year this year, is good on both ends of the floor, would be a good plug-and-play. Might not be a long-term starter, but you got to give a guy like that a chance with the Phoenix Suns, with how thin they are at the 2 and 3 positions right now. So at number 14, I have the Detroit Pistons taking the 6'11" power forward out of Kentucky, and that's Skal Labissiere. So the Pistons, after dishing out Derek Monroe, actually, I think that was a very good move by them long term. They've got Marcus Morris, one of the guys I actually just mentioned, but again, not a long-term solution at power forward. Labissiere has one of the highest ceilings of any power forward in this draft. He was, coming into the season, actually considered one of the top 3 prospects in this recruiting class, and like I said, rough start to the season. He's been actually coming through a little bit better now, and if Labissiere develops alongside Andre Drummond, that'd be a scary, scary combination in the post. Combine that with a lineup that also features Reggie Jackson, who's been good this year, and Stanley Johnson, who's been improving. It's a good lineup for the Pistons. So at number 15, I've got the Denver Nuggets taking the 6'7" shooting guard out of Turkey. Furkan Korkmaz. So again, I mentioned this in every single mock draft. Korkmaz really does have a good offensive game. I've mentioned him in the same boat as Mario Hezonja before. Kind of similar, kind of not. Again, more of a guy you have to go check out on your own. He's got a pretty unique game. He's got a good jumper. He's quick. He's athletic, and I think that he fits in well with a Nugget scheme if they do decide to go with Jaylen Brown as well. Combining Jaylen Brown aside Furkan Korkmaz would add a very good 1-2 punch at the 2 and 3 positions. Again, I mentioned before the Nuggets are extremely weak at the 2 and 3 positions. This is a team that's building right now, I believe, around Emmanuel Mudiay and Kenneth Faried. Like I said, Gallinari, a decent player at the 3, but again, not a long-term option for the Nuggets. So at number 16, I have the Boston Celtics taking the 6'10 power forward out of Gonzaga, and that is Domantas Sabonis. I really like this pick. Obviously, the Celtics, over their history, have been known as a gritty team. Always had that. I mean, not to bring race into this or anything, but like going back to the Larry Bird days, Kelly Olynyk now too. It seems like they've had that one gritty white player that is just hard working in the paint. And Sabonis has had a good finish to the regular season. And Jesus Christ, anyway, yeah, he's played well. Gonzaga's probably going to be a tournament team, and I don't think that Sabonis is going to make it out of the top 16. I think that's as low as he's going to end up going. This is a Celtics team that, like I mentioned before, needs a lot of help in the paint, and with no really long-term options set at the 4 or the 5, I think having options, if they are able to get 2 centers or power forwards, would give them a lot of options to work with, along with having other guys at the point and at the 2 spot like Avery Bradley, like Marcus Smart, like Isaiah Thomas. And really, like I said, all they got right now up in the front court, and they've been fine this year, honestly. The Celtics have been doing all right with Sullinger and Olynyk starting at the 4 and the 5, but again, like I said, not long-term options that will be very successful. I don't know if Olynyk's going to be consistent long-term. This is the first year that he's really shown that he can be a consistent starter and actually be successful at that. So at number 17, I have the Chicago Bulls taking the 6'10 center out of Marquette, and that's Henry Ellenson. So the Bulls right now need a new center. I don't think that they're going to be... I don't even know if they're going to have Joakim Noah after this year. Noah, ever since Tom Thibodeau left, has just looked lost. It's not been a good year for him. He's averaging he's not averaging in double digits for anything. Pau Gasol is a good center, power forward, wherever he ends up playing. Mirotic has been alright, but I think they need another center or power forward guy that can play at the 4 or the 5 that gives them another offensive threat. Now, they could end up looking for a small forward. I think that's another position that the Bulls need to look for. They have Dunleavy and Doug McDermott right now, but like I said, between those two guys, not much athleticism coming through, just really a lot of shooting. And I think adding a guy like Ellenson that can run the floor adds a little bit more youth to the front court beside Pau Gasol, obviously aging, still effective though. It just seems like a good match to me. So at number 18, I have the Denver Nuggets taking the 6'10 center out of Maryland, Diamond Stone. So the Nuggets do have a decent center right now with Jusuf Nurkic. I like Nurkic. I think he's going to be a decent long-term center, but I think that there's better options out there, especially for low post scoring. Diamond Stone is one of the best low post scorers in this draft. If you have not seen him, go see him. He was one of the better centers coming out of high school this year, one of the better centers in the 2015 recruiting class. Jusuf Nurkic, like I said, and Nikola Jokic are a decent rotation of centers right now, but like I said, Denver needs another low post scorer. Fareed's gritty, doesn't have that many post moves though, and like I said, Diamond Stone is one. I just keep mentioning that he's one of the best low post scorers in this draft, and I think he has a pretty high upside in the NBA. So at number 19, I got the Indiana Pacers taking the 6'7 shooting guard out of Florida State, Dwayne Bacon. I like Dwayne Bacon. I've been high on him ever since the beginning of the year. He's got incredible athleticism. I think the Pacers need someone at the really at the 2 position to run by Paul George long term. This is a Pacers team that's looking like they've got a lot of good pieces set for the long term, aside from Paul George. Miles Turner's been huge this year. Jan Mahimi's been good. Monte Ellis has been good. I don't think Rodney Stuckey's going to stick around any longer than 2 more years, and I don't know how much longer they're going to keep George Hill around. George Hill's been the talk of a lot of trades this year, and I think that they really need to look at either the 1 or the 2 spot this year. Monte Ellis just doesn't bring a whole lot of size to the 2 spot. They've got Joe Young, who's been alright this year, but again, not a long-term option either. Now, with not a whole lot of good point guards available at this point in the draft, I'd say Demetrius Jackson would be the best one left. Then looking at a shooting guard, because of just how deep the shooting guard class is this year, would be a good idea for the Pacers. So at number 20, I have the Charlotte Hornets taking a 7-foot center out of the 7-foot center out of UNLV, and that's Steven Zimmerman. So I think the freshman is one of the better centers in this draft. I think he's got good movement. He's one of the better rebounders. He's got one of the highest upsides also. He's good on defense. I think the pick and pop game, his mid-range shooting, is something that will come along in the NBA. Now, I know a lot of Hornets fans won't be happy to see another tall white center taken between all the things that have happened for Cody Zeller and Frank Kaminsky 2 straight years. Hasn't done a lot, or neither player has done a whole lot. So, for me, it's just more of how I think it's actually going to end up going, and it seems like the Hornets always take a guy like that every year. So, anyway, at number 21, I've got the 6'7" shooting guard out of Michigan. For the Atlanta Hawks, I have them taking Kris LeVert. So, the Hawks definitely need a player at the 2 this year. They've still been competing in the East. This is a team that's been talking about not really keeping Jeff Teague for the long term. Dennis Schroeder might be. I don't know if he's a long-term option, but I think that's the guy who they're going to try to go with moving forward. Right now, I think their best shooting guard is Tim Hardaway Jr., and I like Tim Hardaway Jr. He's a good role player, but he's not someone who's going to be a long-term starting shooting guard for the Hawks. They need an option there, and I really like Kris LeVert. I think he's definitely a starting quality NBA shooting guard if he can stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. He's got one of the best scoring touches in college basketball. It's just been hard to see because he's been injured so much. So at number 22, I've got the Philadelphia 76ers taking the 6'5" shooting guard out of Florida State, and that is Malik Beasley. So again, Beasley and Bacon forming one of the better 1-2 punches in college basketball between freshmen, and I like what Malik Beasley brings to the table. He's still very athletic guy, a little bit overshadowed by Dwayne Bacon's athleticism at Florida State. Hard worker, good on both ends of the floor, and I believe he's got a high upside in the NBA. Now, again, the Sixers need to start filling out that backcourt if they want to start actually competing for a playoff spot. And like I said, this is a very deep shooting guard class, and adding an athletic guy with high upside like Malik Beasley would help them start moving in the right direction. So, at number 23, I got the Denver Nuggets taking the 6'5" shooting guard out of Duke, and that is Grayson Allen. So, if things actually go according to this, then that would leave the Nuggets with a small forward, shooting guard, and center out of this draft, and at least in the first round. And like I said, one of the biggest needs probably the biggest need right now for the Denver Nuggets is the 2 spot, and having a true shooting guard like Grayson Allen that could stretch the floor out a little bit for him, add another shooting threat, kind of I wouldn't say extremely similar to Gallinari, but 2 guys that do have a very good scoring touch and a little bit underrated athleticism, especially for Grayson Allen. Now, I think his draft stock's been hurt a little bit by Duke's inconsistencies recently, and just overall I think the whole tripping thing didn't help him out too much. But long term, I don't think it's going to affect him too much. I think he's still going to be a top 25 pick, definitely a first-round pick. Anyway, move on to my number 24 pick. I have the Boston Celtics taking the 6'7" small forward from France, and that is Timothy Luwawu. So I think Luwawu is the second best true small forward in this draft to Brandon Ingram. Now, if you include Jaylen Brown as just a straight small forward, which I'd say he's more of a 3 than a 2, yes. In my big board, I actually had him ranked as a shooting guard. But if you're just talking about pure small forwards, I think Luwawu is the second best. Luwawu, again, is a guy with extremely high upside. He's very athletic, got a very good scoring touch, and runs very well in transition. Now, like I said, the Celtics are a team that could use more players in the front court. They're pretty much set at the 1 and the 2. Now, they do have Jay Crowder right now, who has been extremely good this year. James Young's been decent as well. But I think adding another guy to the rotation that's got high upside that could be a long-term option. Again, it's hard to tell. You probably want to have a security option for if Jay Crowder and James Young don't work out long-term, or if one gets too expensive. Luwawu might not be coming over next year. If he does get drafted, he might be taking another year in France. Not too sure on that situation, but like I said, it'd be good to have a long-term security blanket for that. So at number 25, I've got the LA Clippers taking the 6'8" power forward out of France, and that's Guerschon Yabusele. So the Clippers probably won't end up having Blake Griffin when it comes to next year. It's been talked about that he will probably be traded. Just doesn't sound like it's working out in LA. I think that the Clippers could either look at the 3 or the 4 spot. Again, if Blake Griffin is gone, then you need another option. And again, Yabusele's I think he's one of the better defenders in this draft, one of the more underrated players overall. And this could fill in a team that really doesn't have that many good backup options at power forward. And like I said, even if they do keep Blake Griffin, this adds to a team that really doesn't have that much depth in the front court. So at number 26, I have the Toronto Raptors taking the 6'1" point guard out of Notre Dame, Demetrius Jackson. So I believe this is a contract year for no, it's not. I think it's next year. That's a contract year for Kyle Lowry, and not sure how much longer they're going to be able to keep him. Like I said, this is a team that's probably going to run into a lot of cap issues in coming years because of DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry's emergence these last couple of years, and probably 2 guys that will be demanding max contracts. I'm going to have to look up that Kyle Lowry contract situation, but he's emerged as one of the best point guards in the NBA this year. Wasn't really considered that way at the beginning of the year. And again, I think this is a team that could use a little bit of point guard depth. Not sure how much longer Corey Joseph is going to be around. Decent backup point guard was a good guy in the rotation for, I believe it was the Spurs for a couple of years, backing up Patty Mills and Tony Parker. But again, I think that they could use a starting quality point guard, someone that brings a lot of grit, a lot of drive to the table, like Demetrius Jackson, and I think this is a good pickup at number 26 if he's still available. So at number 27, I have the Philadelphia 76ers taking the 6'3" point guard out of Maryland, and that's Melo Trimble. So Trimble's had really just a rough season. This was a guy who was considered a top 3 point guard at the beginning of the year, and I believe is considered about the 5th or 6th best point guard in the draft now. So I think that Trimble still brings a decent offensive touch to the table. Not the best matchup size-wise. Could use a little bit more to fill out the frame. And again, I think that the Sixers just need to start piecing together a backcourt. He would be the best option available at this point in the draft. This has been a team that hasn't been able to hang on to a point guard for God knows how long. And like I said, adding just a little bit of depth to a backcourt for a team that has, I believe, 3 first-round picks will do them a lot of good. So at number 28, I've got the Phoenix Suns taking the 7-foot center out of Vanderbilt, and that's Damian Jones. So the Suns do have Alex Len right now, a guy who they took at, I believe, number 5 overall in the 2013 NBA draft. He's been all right, just hasn't reached that ceiling yet. Shown sparks, but I think they need to start looking in a different direction. And like I said, I've been saying this the entire season, Damian Jones, one of the best back-to-the-basket scorers of any center in this draft. He's got a very clean scoring touch. The defense is going to have to develop, and just the consistency has to be there a little bit more for Damian Jones. Not sure if that was just a Vanderbilt problem, but I think that was more than just him. Anyway, at number 29, I've got the San Antonio Spurs taking the 6'8" power forward out of Spain, and that's Juan Hernan Gomez. So I've had them taking that guy, or it's taken Hernan Gomez in every single mock draft so far, and obviously the Spurs' most famous team for the draft and stash, and I could see that happening again, obviously with Tim Duncan coming to the end of his career. Needing to look in other directions for power forward. Hernan Gomez, a guy with a decent ceiling. again, another one of the more underrated, unheard of players in this draft, and I think he'll be a solid first-round pick and a solid long-term piece for the San Antonio Spurs. So at number 30, I've got the Golden State Warriors taking the 7'2" center out of France, and that's Jonathan John. This is one guy that, since my big board rankings, I've watched a lot of film on, and I really like. I like his game. I like the way he's been able to develop so far. I like his work ethic, and just got one of the best. I think he could end up being one of the best low post scorers in this draft. I always like to do a lot of work on figuring out who the best low post scorers are in each draft, or just the best centers and power forwards. I can really appreciate good fundamental scoring, good footwork in the paint, and I think there's a lot of good low post scorers in this draft. I think it's one of the more underrated things in this draft. There's a lot of guys who have the ability to be good low post scorers eventually too. And Jonathan, again, I got to get that pronunciation right. I think it's Jonathan John. Anyway, he's a guy that I think could be a good long-term piece for whatever team takes him in the early second, late first. Now, the Warriors do need a center for, I'd say, more than any other position. Now, there are a couple ways they could look just for rotation guys, but I don't think that they're going to end up having Festus Ezeli after this year. Andrew Bogut's obviously not getting any younger, and he's not one of the biggest parts of the team anyway. I think this is a team that, I mean, it would just be unbelievably dangerous if they could add another piece like that. They might want to add a small forward just because, like I said, Iggy's not getting any younger. I don't know what's going to happen with Harrison Barnes this offseason either. He's one of the more intriguing young players heading into free agents. They might get him re-signed, but he's going to command I believe he's commanding just over $1.5 million a year right now, somewhere in that ballpark. And after this offseason, I think he's going to be making at least $5 million a year, so might run into cap issues there. Anyway, that concludes my latest edition of my mock draft 3.0. We'll be posting this sometime soon, along with my NCAA tournament bracketology, picks, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The board. So I've done an NFL draft big board already. That's done with. That was not part of the same ranking series though. And I just finished up with my NBA rankings. If you've not seen that yet, I'll post the link to that entire playlist in the description below. Should definitely go check that out. And instead of doing college basketball, I'm actually going to do, like I said, an NBA draft big board.